Nous arrivons désormais chez vous à travers de nouvelles coordonnées et un signal haute définition pour une qualité de réception inédite. Et pour nous recevoir, pas besoin de bouger votre parabole. Faites juste entrer la fréquence 12541 et le symbole RAY 12500 sur le satellite Amos pour recevoir un signal merveilleux de la télévision panafricaine, même en temps de pluie.
Afrique Média, le monde, c'est nous.
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it. I very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of Afrique Media. Thank you. Thank you, Afrique Media. Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you, Africa.
As the number of confirmed coronavirus cases continues to rise in the continent, more governments are either embarking on a lockdown or extending previously set lockdowns. Most of these governments have imposed a lockdown as a means of curbing the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. Although some have praised this move, others see it as a problem and have criticized it, given most governments are not taking accompanying measures, especially with regards to the common man on the street who survives by going out daily. In Malawi, thousands of vendors in the northern town of Mzuzu on Thursday took to the streets and marched to the city council's offices protesting against a lockdown that goes into effect this weekend, vowing to disregard it. They showed off banners with slogans such as "Lockdown more poisonous than corona" and "We would rather die of corona than hunger." In Zimbabwe, farmers traveling overnight Wednesday to the country's busiest market to deliver their produce were met with police who dispersed them with batons and burnt 3 tons of their fresh fruit and vegetables. In Kenya, a stampede took place after thousands of people went to Nairobi Kibera slum desperate for food assistance. Hunger and anger are building in Lagos and other major African cities with little or no social safety net to protect the poor from the economic fallout of the Covid-19 pandemic. The World Food Programme says at least 20% of Africa's 1.2 billion people are already undernourished, noting that the combination of widespread poverty, reliance on imported food and price spikes due to the epidemic could prove deadly if African governments do not act quickly. Furthermore, the World Bank, in a recent report, said the COVID-19 crisis has the potential of creating a severe food security crisis in Africa. Besides the food security concerns as a result of the lockdown, there is equally the concern of how security agents are going about the process. In Nigeria, the country's human rights body claims at least 18 people have been killed by security forces during the enforcement of measures to curb the spread of COVID-19, a figure higher than documented toll inflicted by the disease. Hello everybody, it is always a pleasure to know you're watching Africa Media, and thanks for joining us on this other edition of Views on the Continent, your interactive platform where you get to have your say on the happenings on the continent. And today we continue to talk about the impact of the coronavirus pandemic that has taken its toll on the world and in Africa as well, and the number of confirmed cases of the coronavirus disease continues to soar in Africa, and more governments are embarking on lockdowns in their various countries. But how then are these lockdowns affecting the population? That's what we shall be looking at this afternoon on the program. Government lockdown, is it problem or solution to the coronavirus pandemic in the continent. So that's going to be a point of discussion this afternoon. And usually, as it is the tradition, numbers will be put on the screen in the minutes ahead, and you can always call us to have your say on today's topic. And with us in the studio this afternoon is Mr. Kengafe Ernest. He is the Continental President of the Africa Patriotic Youth Council Movement. Hello, Mr. Kengafe, and thanks for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure to be here to discuss issues that have to do with the citizens of Africa, and it's a pleasure to see that we contribute our own view to see that our citizens go through these hard times and come out victorious.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kengafe. And in the minutes ahead, we shall be listening to him, and he's going to throw more light on today's topic. Today's topic. And in the minutes ahead, like I earlier mentioned, our numbers will be put on the screen. But before we start taking your calls, let us get this report done for us by Emanuela Nyoki Sade on the impact of lockdown in the different African countries as concerns the COVID-19 pandemic.
Many African countries have introduced lockdown in order to halt the spread of the coronavirus, but some experts think ordinary people have to be involved in choosing the solution that will work for them. Countries on the continent have learned much from tackling epidemics such as HIV and Ebola that should be put on a good use as they face the impact of the COVID-19. The most important lesson is that the communities must be the one at the forefront in the response. They noted that the measures such as the lockdown being called by most African leaders could work. Firstly, infectious disease outbreak unfolds differently in different communities according to social conditions that only local people can know. Secondly, no control measures, for example, lockdown, should be imposed without the consent of the people affected. It is only when local people are fully involved in planning and implementing epidemic control measures that it can work. In each case, the key factor and social behavior such as greetings, meddling amongst the generation, washing of hands, or maintaining physical distances top in the control on the continent. Africa has the burden of diseases different to other countries. There are good reasons to fear that the COVID-19 will be particularly dangerous to tens of thousands of people in the continent as tuberculosis was. One reason given by Italian high mortality rate has been that its country is largely populated with 23% of people aging with 65 years, who are mostly at high risk to contract the COVID-19, while on the contrary, just less than 2% of the population of Africa is at 65 years old. For this reason alone, the virus mortality rate may be lower in the continent. Moreover, governments do not have the data and the models to precise experts' prediction and will not get them quickly enough. China, Europe, and North America all adopted much same epidemic control to lockdown, but this is not the case for Africa. African governments follow suit, but in general, lockdown may be simply unworkable in the continent. Only a few African countries, such as Rwanda and South Africa, have the capacity to administer a centralized strategy. Some other experts are of the school of thought that the lockdown is the only solution to curb the disease, but given the poor states of most African countries, where people live with barely $1 per day, their governments are termed heavily indebted or on the poorest countries in the world, with being unable to support their citizens at this time. It is very difficult to ask people to stay at home with nothing to eat or take care of their loved ones, which will also push them out of the house against their wish. Africa's health system are already overstretched with COVID-19 demands and emergency response at scale, and if not looked into, might increase the rate of stealing and even shut down some economics completely due to this. Some countries called only for partial shutdown because they cannot meet up with the needs of their people. It is clear that each African country will have to design its own response, suitable for its own need. With the two diverse thoughts of whether shutting down the country is good or not, we are left to judge.
Thank you so much, Emanuela Nyoki-Sade, for that very explicit report that concerns lockdowns in Africa when it comes to the coronavirus pandemic. As we may all know, most African governments have imposed either a curfew or a total lockdown to try to contain the spread of the coronavirus pandemic that is actually taking its toll on the African continent at the moment. Just a few months back, that the first case was announced on the continent. The continent is now talking of thousands of confirmed cases, and it is a worrying number that is leading most of these African governments to embark on lockdown. But then the question arises, are these governments taking accompanying measures when it comes to enforcing this lockdown? As complaints have come up severally, as when it comes to the common man on the street, especially those who go out on a daily basis to cater for their families. How do they cope with such lockdowns, and how is the government struggling to meet up with the demands of the common man on the street? We know it is a way of trying to contain the spread of the disease, but then how is the government playing its part in meeting the needs of the common man on the street? Like I mentioned in the introduction earlier on, in Malawi that recently recorded, it is one of those African countries that recently recorded cases of the Covid-19, and the government is going this weekend to announce 21-day lockdown. Now some petty traders have taken to the streets to protest against that, and that they are not going to respect it. They say they better die. It is preferable they die of COVID-19 rather than hunger. So that's a point of discussion this afternoon. Government lockdowns, is it a solution or a problem to the COVID-19 on the continent? So our lines are opened. You can always call us and tell us what you think about today's topic. And like I mentioned earlier on, together with us this afternoon is Mr. Kengafe Ernest, and he is the continental president of the Africa Patriotic Youth Council movement. Coming back to you, Mr. Kengafe, what are your general thoughts as concerns lockdown in Africa, and what more can this African government do to make it right? Because there are a lot of complaints coming up as concerns this lockdowns. Many people, especially those who go out on a daily basis to cater for their families, they are complaining of going hungry.
Yeah, it's a big problem, and I also see lockdown is a good measure to overcome the COVID-19 spread. But it's also a good measure when you have alternative ways put in place by the authority in place to see that you do not impose lockdown, and at the end you have worst as you expected. Because if you put the lockdown and there are no alternative measures to see that the common man on the street or is getting access to basic necessity to make a living, is also a big problem. So my concern in that area is that governments that are implementing lockdown measures, they should also copy from other countries that are implementing lockdown and what they have done before implementing lockdown. You can take, for example, in US, the budget that was raised before the implementation of lockdown. It was to see that as they implement the lockdown, there will be possibility to provide the basic necessity for the citizen to be able to see that they are not in the wrong, that is in the worst aspect or the worst scenario. So to me, I will encourage the African government to also adopt such measures, because I have also witnessed a lot of citizen crime that they are not being able to go to the market to do this, to get their daily activities, and they don't also have money to get food for their families. So if a government is implementing such a measure, it should also put in place some possibilities like we have seen. We have to also appreciate those governments in Africa that have taken some positive aspect, like the Rwanda and the Senegal government, that they have also shown us some possible ways that when you are taking a decision, you should accompany your decision with possibility of sustaining that decision. That possibility of sustaining that decision is accompany your decision with basic necessity to share to this common man, so that by the time the common man is feeling that I'm supposed to have gone to the farm today before I have food, but now I have food and I have been told by my government to stay home so as to prevent the spread of this virus. It will go a long way to give them comfortability to respect this lockdown. But if you just give an announcement that there is a lockdown, and at the end the problem is definitely affecting by the common man, it is not going to be effective, and there is no way you will be able to contain that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kengafe. But now the question is, the question I even meant to ask before is Africa really ready for a lockdown? Is Africa ready? Because I want to believe some African governments are embarking on a lockdown because they have seen other countries embarking on a lockdown. So are these countries that embark on lockdown without accompanying measures, what is in the minds of the leaders of this country?
Now, when they ask if they are ready, I can say they are not ready, because if you see, the possibility of being ready is putting in place what we have just discussed. Like, you have to make the citizen to know that as you are being stopped from carrying out your daily activities, this is an alternative way out. So if these measures are not put in place and communicated to the citizens, it is not a way to confirm that they are ready. Because, for instance, if you see the transport in some countries, especially Cameroon, the transport has been increased. The transport fare in taxi and urban transport has increased. So now the common man is the one suffering. And now if the government has issued the lockdown or restricted the number of persons carried in transport agency, but now reduce the price of the petrol, which is the common something that the drivers, all the drivers will do for transportation. I think that would have been the best way out to enforce this decision. Now now the transport fare is doubled and tripled in some areas. Who is suffering? The common man. So how do you expect the common man to think about such a decision? So that is why we said that any decision that is taken without proper alternative measures is not a long-lasting decision.
Now, there are some governments, like we mentioned in the introduction early on, there are some governments where the security agents, they are actually enforcing these measures with a lot of brutality. For example, in Nigeria, the human rights body is talking of the Nigerian security agents who have killed 18 people through their means of enforcing these lockdown measures, and that's the figure is quite higher than the number of people who have actually died of the disease. What are your thoughts on that?
My thought on that is that the blame goes to the leaders of the country, because you are the authority of that country, and if you are not taking proper measures, like we have seen, if, for instance, perhaps these numbers would have been reduced if their leaders are taking daily briefing to find out what is done on the field today, how is it improved. They would have discovered that these mistakes are going on, and they will be able to correct it immediately. But if you keep it for so long, for more than 1 week, your citizens are not able to listen to you, address them. How do you expect them to, or the leader will be not be able to get the proper information to caution the security forces not to carry out such brutal measures? So the fault goes back to the leaders who are not able to carry out such daily briefing or get to know what is happening on the ground.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kengafe. We already have our first caller on the line, Mr. Photo Brian, calling us all the way from Nigeria. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program. Hello, if you are on the line, you are on air, go ahead with your contribution.
Other countries are providing for their citizens. The case in Nigeria will only get figures. And take, for example, the case of Cameroon. Cameroon is, the cases are increasing day and night, day and night, day and night. And there are no measures being taken. We hear of this, that, and nothing is being done. No lockdown. Take, for instance, the major cities like Bafoussam, Douala, and Yaoundé that have coronavirus. Nothing is done to stop people from moving in and out of that place to to stop the spread of this coronavirus. Now come to Nigeria. The two major cities that have been attacked, they have total curfews. There's total curfews in this area. And if you see well, the way they did it, nobody enters, nobody goes out. And it was fully respected. Even though Nigeria has added 2 more weeks for lockdown. But the masses are angry. People that are dying now are not even dying of the virus. Take for instance, a policeman in those state shot 2 people, 2 boys who were doing sport in the field. They forced them to enter their car and they refused. And they shot them. Everybody was like, wow. You go to Delta State, a military man shot a civilian. And when he was confronted, he said the man was carrying arms. And they asked, where are the arms? He didn't say anything. And he was also murdered. And in other parts of Nigeria, in some states, but you come to realize that it seems as if the law is being enforced on some part where there are crises. Like, let me take for instance, in the southwest and the northwest of Cameroon, this thing is being enforced. Then if you are caught moving on the street without it, you will be punished. But take Yaoundé, Douala, and Bassam, nothing is happening. Africans are not ready for this lockdown. And I don't even think the figures they are giving for the coronavirus are real. If they were real, they could have taken measures like Nigeria is taking strict measures. They could have taken strict measures to see that the virus does not go around the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Photo Brian, calling us all the way from Nigeria, saying that Africa is not ready for lockdown. So that's what we are looking at, the lockdowns that are being imposed by the different African governments. Is it going to be a problem or a solution to the pandemic? We do hear of, like in Zimbabwe, we hear of farmers who were transporting their goods to the market. They were stopped by security agents, and about 3 tons of their goods were burnt down. How is this going to help the common man to survive when governments embark on lockdowns and the security agents are rather pushing people to the wall rather than trying to make them comfortable to be able to respect this lockdown? Now, let us get this element from South Africa to show how people are actually coping with this lockdown. Can we have the element from South Africa, how South Africans are trying to comply with the lockdown that was imposed by the government some weeks back?
I am Innocent You in Kumba. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to viewers of Afrique Media. Now, let me just clearly put it in a very short term.
The streets of Soweto, the biggest township in the country, amid the lockdown, life here is just normal. Many are defying the call to stay at home. They say it's impossible when you struggle to make ends meet.
There's nothing to do in the house, and the food very you're frustrated. You're in the house and you can't generate any income, and yeah.
I'm also afraid of contracting corona, just like anybody else. But the reality is that there is no food in the house. Some of us being out is not a choice. This is how we are able to provide for our families. The reality is one cannot stay at home while I'm starving. Government must come up with something instead of telling us to stay at home while we don't have food to eat. We don't stay in the suburbs. We don't have money.
If I stay indoors, I won't be able to have food. So I'm outside to make something in order to eat.
Similar scenes in Sebokeng in the Vaal. Here residents accuse government of being inconsiderate, out of touch with reality, and forgetting about the vulnerable. It doesn't help to die of hunger inside our homes. It's better to die fending for your family.
There's no food in our home as we speak. So what's the use to stay indoors when we have nothing to eat? There is seriously no need to stay indoors.
If then elder people are outside, then they come into us and then they come outside and buy something like sweets and other stuff. So now how will I chase a kid to go and, when they are going outside to buy something?
Many countries have paid a heavy price for a slow response to the pandemic. Staying at home, avoiding public places, and cancelling all social activities is the preferred best defense against the virus. But it was always going to be difficult to enforce in densely populated areas with high unemployment and poverty levels.
Welcome back. That's a report from South Africa showing how some South Africans are trying to cope with the lockdown that was imposed by the government a few weeks back. And some of them, they're complaining of the fact that staying at home is not going to put food on their tables. Coming back to you, Mr. Kengafe, from the report we just watched, that's just a cross-section of what most Africans on the common man on the streets are going through. So what would you say about that? What more can the government do? Because even in countries where the government is struggling to provide for the citizens, it is not always enough. People are still always having that urge to want to go out.
Yeah, the problem, you have to also look at the continent where we are and also look at how our leaders have been operating before coronavirus and see if they really deserve to be appreciated with their formulas that they have been using previously to tackle other challenges. And this is why some youth are saying that they are more afraid of their leaders and their government more than coronavirus, because a lot of them have been going through a lot of torment and the leaders are not responding to them, and now there is a crisis that is affecting the world, and yet leaders are just taking verbal decisions without accompanying the decisions with proper actions and support that will really make a common man to appreciate the decision. That is why I think it is not a welcoming idea that the leader will just make a decision without seeing that the decision is accompanied with some resources that will enable the citizen to see a need to accept or respect such decisions. So I still call on our leaders to reflect and see that these common people, they don't have any, a lot of them, their jobs have been affected, their family need food, they have a lot of challenges. And being as a government, I think there are there must be resources for emergency situations like this. You cannot claim not to have funding, or what about the present funding that has been distributed or contributed by local citizens to help fight it? The citizens need to also know and get the account how it is being managed, because a lot of people are even complaining that since the outbreak they have not seen how these funds have been properly managed, and so they are questioning that if a country is aware of support from out, maybe $1 billion, which is equivalent to at least entitled each citizen for a small country, each citizen should at least feel the presence of or the impact of that donation, maybe by just having 1,000 francs. That will go a long way to create awareness and give confidence to the citizen that they have some connection with their leaders. But now, if you don't see these things and you don't see any proper action, no food distribution, no allowance, healthcare distribution, nothing. So how do you expect a common man to feel? He's still left behind without any possibility of meeting up the daily challenges. Now,
when we go to Kenya, we heard of a stampede as a result of the fact that people were struggling to get foodstuff. Raila Odinga provided, that's in the Kibera slum in Kenya, he provided some foodstuff, and people were fighting to get foodstuff, and there was a stampede, and so several people were injured. They were even talking of some supposed two deaths. So what explains the fact that you have people rushing to collect foodstuff like this? Doesn't mean the government did not disburse enough for people to take care of themselves during this period of curfew?
Definitely, I think that is the case, because if you know that a community is made up of 20,000 inhabitants, and then you are coming with 10 bags of rice, what do you expect people to do? They would definitely fight, because each of the 20,000 will want to get a share of the 10 bags of rice, and therefore you are creating more chaos than trying to resolve the problem. That is what I think our African politicians are still, even in this moment, trying to politicize the coronavirus issue for their political gains, which is not something that we as young people should appreciate. We want to see genuine effort to help the local man on the street to survive during this terrible time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kengafe. We take more callers. Our second caller on the line, Mr. Yu Innocent, calling us from Kumba in the southwest region of Cameroon. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program.
Hello, Laurencia. I am Innocent Yu in Kumba. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to viewers of Afrique Media. Now, let me just clearly put it in a very short term. Africans are not set for lockdowns. Africans are not set. Some African nations have taken the cue. They have moved ahead. Some are taking the cue, but you don't go shutting down a nation blindly. That's the truth. Shutdown is a perfect way of quarantining affected cases of the COVID-19 on the African continent in every nation. And most of these nations have come in extremely very late and are taking measures, whatever. If you look at a case like Cameroon, let me just bring the example back to Cameroon here. When the first case was noticed in Yaoundé, the government was supposed to shut down the nation's capital, Yaoundé, and quarantine that case, or those who have been, lazing or moving around with that particular case. But the government sat there, they waited for the 7th, the 10th case, the 12th case, then it was moving up to the 20th case, then they came now and said, okay, people should wash their hands, they will limit travels, but you imagine the crowds at the different markets, and the simple reason why the government will not shut down, let me just make it straight to you, why some governments will not shut down is because the economic burden is high and tight on them. Finances that were meant for government coffers had either been siphoned or used carelessly on purposes that were not necessary, and some of the nations don't even provide for depreciation. They don't even keep a substantial amount of money in case of any eventuality. And I keep on telling people that in every case where the medical field or education or commerce are tampered with politically, you destroy the nation. You destroy everything that you're planning for. Okay, you take the case of Nigeria, take the case of Ghana. The lockdown is coming in with financial subventions. People have to sacrifice their salaries in order to aid the population to live indoors. You don't just shut down. You help the population to live indoors, because every government is supposed to take care of their citizens. So you're supposed to feed them, you're supposed to keep them indoors and make sure that they are secured, they are fine. You don't just shut down people and you keep them indoors and you expect them to start clapping for you. No. There are a series of measures that you have to take in order to shut down a nation. You don't just shut down. Even though shutting down a particular area.
Thank you so much, Mr. Innocent Yu, calling us all the way from Kumba in the southwest region of Cameroon, saying that government really have to take accompanying measures in order to make a shutdown effective. If not, then it's going to be a waste of time. Another call on the line, Mr. Shu Gerard. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program.
Gerard calling from Yaoundé, Cameroon. Yes, the controversy that surrounds the shutdown affair, whether Africans are ready or not, is really a matter of controversy, because we Africa have been plunged into this coronavirus issue and the movement of people coming in from Europe into Africa has been spreading this virus in Africa, and that's why it is growing while in the African state. Now, some countries are really struggling to implement measures in order to curb the spread of this disease within the population, and that is why in Cameroon here, in our own country here, the government has only shut down schools. Schools are not functioning in the country, and that is the only area where that is not functioning. But in other areas, it is functional. People are still going to work. Buses are still moving, carrying people, even though they are complaining because the number have been limited. Markets are still functional, and in other areas, everywhere is moving except schools that are being shut down because they know the danger in which when children go to school, if one carries the disease, it can rapidly spread to other children, and of course it affect most communities in the country. Now in other countries, of course, they've monitored the situation and the complete shutdown. The aim of shutdown is to prevent the spread of disease from moving from one place to another. We know the economic impact of this shutdown because people are confused on argument. People are confused on the argument about this shutdown because each country has her own measure in which they have taken to complete limit the spread of the disease. Let me tell you, because in Italy, when the government imposed a shutdown in Italy, people were hesitant. People were still moving around doing their things, and we saw the rapidity in which the thing increased in Italy and then killed millions of people, in thousands of people in that country. And I think that each country has her own way in monitoring the situation and applying the shutdown measures. But people when people are complaining that markets are still going and the rest, of course, if markets are going, if they say, okay, that people should stop going to the market, people still complain that they have not bought things enough, they have not done like this. That's so we cannot have, the government cannot listen to all the people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shu Gerard, for taking part in the program. Another caller on the line, Mr. Muki Emmanuel. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program. Before we get to Mr. Muki, he's going to come back. There is another caller on the line. Hello, and thanks for joining us on the program.
Good afternoon, televiewers of African Media. This is Emmanuel calling from the United Arab Emirates. Thank you very much, Lawrence, for this wonderful topic. Lawrence, I would say that the governments of Africa are not yet ready for this lockdown. Because if you see from the topic, a lot of African governments have listed on more harm than good with regards to the COVID-19. We have seen cases in Nigeria where there is killing, in Malawi, in Zimbabwe, where they are destroying goods, and we even saw when the Kenyan president came out to apologize to the citizens because of police brutality in trying to implement the lockdown. Valencia, the WHO instituted self-isolation, quarantining, and social distancing to reduce the spread of the coronavirus. Implementing a complete lockdown should be for the good of the people, for the health of the people, not for show. For me, African leaders instituting the lockdown without not putting accompanying measures is like they want to feel belong, not putting the citizens at heart. Because if you put the citizens at heart, you want to implement such a situation, you will put measures to support the citizens that you are trying to protect. Because if you look at what happened to Senegal, the government of Senegal, we heard how the government of Senegal gave out 184,000 to each household to support them, and Rwanda as well also gave out food items, bags of rice and oils to support the citizens. With such measures put in place, why will you not stay at home to prevent the spread of the virus? To me, we even thank God that the coronavirus is even still sporadic in Africa, because if it is to be the way it is taking place in Europe and America, and then I am for sure certain that Africa is not yet ready to handle the virus. And God so kind, it is not spreading the way it is spreading in these other Western countries. The governments of Africa, Laurencia, are not yet very much ready to handle this coronavirus. Yes, we look back in Cameroon, they shut down schools and other transport sectors, the markets are open. Each government has its way of handling the situation. But are we handling it because we want that other person should see that we are handling the situation, or we are actually doing it because we care about the persons? If we care about the people, we put every measure in place to support the people. If people have been quarantined without no supporting resources, then I will say we are not yet ready to handle the situation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Muki Emmanuel, for contributing on the program. Coming back to you, Mr. Kingafe. This African government, is it that some of these governments are not up to the task to provide accompanying measures as concerns this lockdown so that their citizens can be at ease? And if that be the case, can the government not solicit help from, because I know there could be some willing patriots of the country who want to help out during such decisions. And for example, like your organization, I think your organization is embarked on such kinds of issues. What can you say about that?
Yeah, I think the authority of the country is the first authority to listen to, and if they are weak, definitely any other organization or partners will feel discouraged to push forward maybe proposals that could help overcome the spread of the COVID-19. That is why I think that the government, and this thing has really come to expose weak government that do not have the temperament to be called a government. Now you have the real crisis that is a test of how leadership looks like. And today we are discovering who real leaders are and who fake leaders are. So this thing has really come to like expose those kind of situations, that problems that we local citizens have been crying for so long. But nothing has ever come up like this, that the world is really focusing on to really see how now most of these leaders have been exposed, and some unfortunately have not been able to give proper briefing to their citizens to be able to make them feel that they elected a leader and the leader is responding to them in time of need.
Now, if actually the government is not taking these measures to accompany the lockdown or the curfews that have been put in place, does it mean that some of these organizations of goodwill cannot walk up to the government and bring up their proposals, even if the government is not doing what they expect?
I think most of the government in Africa, politically, they will want to politicize the issue, even when it comes to at the detriment of citizens. They will still want to politicize the issue, because this is a situation where you don't need to see your political views as a major point to be considered. You have to consider the life of the people, first. Now, concerning your question, you know, leaders, if you come in now to support, they may think that after the effect, you will be people will regard you as someone who chip in the greatest effort to overcome the spread of this, and you will become more victorious, or more, you will be admired better than the government or the regime in place. So this is a very technical issue, but unfortunately in developed countries, they don't look at things like that. When citizens are going through a hard period like this, they always come together to find out reasonable solutions to overcome it. But in Africa, we politicize it, and at the end, the local man on the street that suffers. The one suffering. So that is why our organization, the African Patriotic Youth Council Movement, which is in over 36 African countries today, is mobilizing in our local communities and getting to, because another thing that we have discovered is people are not well informed about this COVID-19 and the dangerous and the danger,
especially those in the suburbs,
and those in the suburbs who does not even watch TV. We need to form a committee to walk down to the street, educate people on how to use their PPE, the person protective materials. We give them that education, because another thing is, if you are not informed, you will not be able to act, and that is why our government should also assist this thing that we call fighting. If the government is genuine enough, the citizen will genuinely assist them in the fight of the COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kingafe. We'll come back to you. Let's first of all get this caller on the line. Mr. Mark, calling us from China. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program.
Yeah, and the panelists, you guys are doing a wonderful job for the people of Africa and Cameroon, and we must applaud you on that. Most governments in Africa are not ready to combat the coronavirus. Therefore, locking them down will actually be another burden because the people depend on go and hustle and eat for their family. They don't have a stable income. What other governments are doing, and even the government of China did, was that they were able to carve out some money that they could be able to help their citizens in this time of the lockdown. You don't lock people down without giving them food. It means you're going to kill them of hunger instead of the coronavirus. If you are able to provide for them like some other African countries like Rwanda and Chad and other countries are doing, is good. For the case of Cameroon, Cameroon has a lot of money to take care of all the citizens. And they should not go borrowing money because the money is right there. All the ministers and the president, let them start at the likes of Atangaji and Ovia and all the ministers. All of them have embezzled state funds. If they have less money in their accounts that they have embezzled from Cameroon, is at least 40 billion US dollars in their account for all the ministers. That is what they have in their account. Let them go into the money, withdraw some part of it, take it and share to the people of Cameroon. That way they can lock the country down. If they don't do this, it will be difficult to combat hunger for the people, and it will be difficult to combat the coronavirus. It is already getting to 1,000 cases. When it gets to 2,000, 3,000, the health system, which is very weak, will not be able to accommodate, and therefore you all in Cameroon should be ready to go into mass grave. Until this is done, I pray on those that are still living and breathing to respect basic hygiene rules. But for the lockdown, it's practically impossible because hunger will kill the people more than coronavirus. Let those who have embezzled state funds go into their bank accounts, take the money, share to Cameroonians, and then lock them down. Until this is done, then I don't think they are ready for the coronavirus. Thank you so much.
Sir, for participating on the program. Politicians should make that sacrifice to go into their account and provide for the common man if they really want to fight against this virus. That's according to Mr. Mark, who called us all the way from China. Another call on the line, Mr. Ngoe Marcel. Hello, and thanks for joining us on the program. Hello, Mr. Ngoe Marcel. If you're there, you're on air. Go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, good afternoon, lovers of African media. This is Ngoe Marcel calling from Douala, Cameroon. When you look at the measures put in place by some African countries, it is very, very encouraging in fighting this COVID-19. Even though those measures put in place are not helping in any way, because when you look at the numbers of cases that are recorded or that are recorded every day in Africa, and you keep on asking yourself, is there any measures that this government they are putting in place, or are there any measures that the government they are put in place in order for them to bring out or to cure this disease in Africa? I begin to accept with the Malawian population that came to the street protesting against their government on their lockdown, because when you look at it critically, you can't impose a lockdown. You can't give measures without helping the common man. But look at it critically on the lockdown proposed by some African countries. Just take for instance Guinea-Conakry, Guinea. They imposed the lockdown, but the government helped them. Look at it critically. They will not pay electricity bill for 3 months. They will not pay water for 3 months. The rents in the whole country is frozen till December. Look at it take for example in Ghana. the electricity bills and all the other bills, they have been reduced to 50%. Look at it. When you look at how some government they care for their countries, but look now, come to Cameroon, you will see them always saying that stay at home, wash your hands, don't go out without mask. I begin to ask myself, do we really have lockdown in Cameroon? Because there are no measures that they are putting in place to help the common man. That shows that there are no measures. They are not putting any measures in place. It's as if the only sector that is affected in Cameroon here is only educational sector. Nothing else. Everything. When you go to the market, you go to the street are moving normally.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ngwe Masal. Last caller for the day, Mr. Tayong Fa Elvis. Hello and thanks for joining us on the program.
Well, good afternoon to Lorenza. Good afternoon to the thousands of televiewers of Freak Media. This is Fa Elvis Tayong calling from Douala in Cameroon. We're regarding the fight against the spread of COVID-19 as an initiative already taken upon by many African countries. It is quite a laudable initiative given that COVID-19 does exist and we need to fight against its spread. But then we understand the moves put in place by some African countries, as Ella mentioned above, such as Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Kenya. But what we have to understand is that in the midst of all of these moves, the attention of the people in terms of the provision of basic needs should be paramount. And put on the table as far as the government's execution is concerned. And so when we look at these countries above, it is but clear that the people have every reason, I repeat, every reason to resist these government measures. So African countries or African governments who have refused to take into consideration accompanying measures to fight COVID-19 have already failed. They have already failed from square one. Because as I said earlier, we need to copy good examples and not bad examples. It becomes abnormal that while other countries disburse running budgets to fight COVID-19, ensure the supply of basic necessities to the population, especially those who live below the normal standard of living, some living below or $1 and below per day. You know, these persons have to be taken.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tayong Fa, for participating on the program. We have just a few seconds to the end of the program. To your final conclusions, Mr. Kengafe, what can you say generally about this lockdown on the continent?
I want to sincerely say that the government should critically look at their decision, because if you impose lockdown, and as it is now, some citizens are paying charges as a result of coronavirus instead of receiving support from their government. So the government should rethink and make proper supplies to their citizens if they want to implement lockdown. And also regarding the APYCM as the continental leader, I wish to say that we as African Patriotic Youth Council movement, we are advocating for African solutions to African problems, because we believe that this COVID-19 has come and we have seen young people coming up with innovations that could help fight the COVID-19. But unfortunately, the government of several countries are not supporting these innovations from young people, which could as well help them, because like in Morocco, they started the production of ventilation, and the production has gone to the level where they have to start exporting. You know that this COVID-19 has come to create a lot of financial and economic damages to a lot of government. And so these young people are coming up with innovations, and the government is, instead of using some of this running budget to fight coronavirus to support these ideas, it will help a long way. That is why we continue to advocate for African solutions for African problems as African Patriotic Youth Council movement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kengafa Ernest, the Continental President of the Africa Patriotic Youth Council movement. I want to thank you so much for taking out time to join us in the studio this day. We want to thank you for your presence, and we also want to thank all those who took out time to participate on the program. Your opinion always counts as concerns the issues that are affecting the continent. So thanks also go to technicians for touching the buttons to make the program a successful one. Another edition of the program comes up on Tuesday at 14 hours GMT. For another interesting topic will be yours that day. Do not miss out. Until then, you have a lovely weekend in the company of more programs on Afrique Media.
Nous arrivons désormais chez vous à travers de nouvelles coordonnées et un signal haute définition pour une qualité de réception inédite. Et pour nous recevoir, pas besoin de bouger votre parabole. Faites juste entrer la fréquence 12541 et le symbole RAY 12500 sur le satellite Amos pour recevoir un signal merveilleux de la télévision panafricaine, même en temps de pluie.
Afrique Média, le monde, c'est nous.
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it. I very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of Afrique Media. Thank you, Afrique Media. Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you, Africa.